Jay Vogel of Natural Resources Planning Services explains how his clients benefit from their expertise in forestry, wildlife, and environmental services, and how they bring value to property owners. We hope you enjoy.
In Our Expert Opinion podcast is brought to you by SVN Saunders Ralston Dantzler Real Estate, a full-service land and commercial brokerage with over $4 billion in transactions since 1996.
Welcome back to In Our Expert Opinion podcast. I am the host, Linda Schultz, and I am joined by my co-host, Chad Mills. And this is our second take at this. I was talking for a solid 4 minutes before Chad realized that he did not have himself sorted. Mm-hmm. While I cannot put the blame solely on you.
Well, I'm going to cast the blame. Always.
I know what I know now.
And here we go.
And this is going to be a really great episode now.
In your expert opinion, it is.
But you almost blew it. For all of us. We almost all is touch and go right now, Chad.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like a bad flight.
Like a really bad flight by a budget airline.
Yeah. International, even.
West Africa, even.
Could have been West Africa. Could have been...
We don't know if it was Libya, Siberia.
Iberia. I think Iberia might be an airline, actually.
Yeah. Iberian Airlines.
Yeah.
I think on your intro and the last one, you were saying that you don't claim to be an expert on a whole lot of things, and that's how this one's starting off.
Yeah.
That's all right, though. We have an expert with us.
We do have an expert with us today. Thank God. He's going to have to carry this episode because now I've expended all of my energy on the faux intro for the podcast that we were not recording right because of a camera situation.
Yeah, some malfunctions.
Oh my God. Anyways, I'm joined by Jay Vogel today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We're only starting 30 minutes late.
No.
So I hope that you have all day.
I do.
And you're going to lunch with Dan Brooks after this?
I am, yep. We go way back.
Had a suggestion for lunch, and that was Chili's, because Dan texted me about Chili's over the weekend. Dan texted Bridget and I just a link to Chili's rewards. No explanation. Nothing.
Wow, okay.
Just a link. And so I immediately was like, oh, this is like a spam or scam or whatever.
Right.
So I texted him and I said, Chili's rewards, question mark. And he was like, yeah, they're the best rewards ever. And he goes into a diatribe as to why they are the best rewards. And I think that this was Friday night or Saturday. And I just was like, okay, there's a lot of text that I expect to receive on the weekend.
Right.
That
wasn't it?
Never a thought in my mind.
Dan works in mysterious ways.
Dan does work in mysterious ways. But anyways, I ended up signing up for Chili's rewards. So
great. I think you won. I mean, that sounds like a good weekend.
I mean, I didn't go, but it's
when you do, you'll be
rewarded.
Right.
Yes. So hope you like Chili's.
Yeah, I do.
Man, Dan the man taking the mayor of San Antonio, Florida to lunch.
Oh my God. Did you know that we are standing in the presence of greatness?
I didn't know that.
The mayor of a 800-person town.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is my dream, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. Did you ever watch Veep with
I've seen episodes, yes.
That's how I imagine it.
Yeah, I look off into the crowd sometimes and I'm just confused. If you want to have the job, and move to San Ann, I would give it to you.
Do you think that they have a Target there?
We have a Target. They're building a Target distribution center.
Are they really?
Yes. It's outside of town.
Okay.
So unfortunately it won't be on our tax rolls. But
okay.
Do you think they have?
Do you think they do?
I'm pretty sure he knows what all is there. He's been there a little while.
It's a small town and there's very little. So.
And your grandfather was mayor there as well.
He was mayor in the 80s.
That's wild.
It's a family tradition. But I'm actually not the first like generational.
Yeah.
Because it's a small town, and so there's so few families.
Oh my God, is
that
there
several
competing families?
Passed it through. Yeah, there's several larger families that have been around since the founding of the town.
Is it like the Hatfields and the McCoys? You know how you guys are like, it's like, oh, well, now he is mayor, but I'm going to run next time.
No, everybody gets along.
Okay.
It's not, we're not that competitive. So.
No, that's really cool though. But I think you were saying that, did you run for mayor?
I did. The first time I ran in a contested election, and there were 5 people running for 3 seats. And,
Wow.
And so I got in, and then when I ran for re-election, I was not opposed.
Okay.
And then the commission selected me as mayor in May.
Yeah.
And so I'll serve for a year, and then I actually have to run again. And so we'll just see where it takes us. But it's been fun. I enjoyed the service, and it's a great town. It's a great place to live. And so when you have that connection to a place, to a specific town, it's definitely a pleasure to get to serve.
Yeah. You got to get that campaign started, You're going to have like buttons or like.
I have campaign signs.
You do?
They come out every 2 years. We have to run every 2 years.
Okay.
So if it's a contested election, they'll be making a reappearance.
Man, do you like go around and count how many people have your signs in there?
Yes.
You like take notes.
I
Like,
do,
okay.
yeah. Well, I have a spreadsheet. Yeah. The first time I ran, I actually made notes of how many people I thought would actually vote for me.
Yeah.
But
Do all 800 people go out and vote?
we have about I want to say it's a 35% turnout, which isn't terrible. It's not fantastic.
Okay.
But it's not bad.
It's enough to get the job done.
It is. Yep.
Or
Absolutely.
what are we, good enough for government work?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So about 325 people vote, and you have to get 150 of those people.
That's about right, actually. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good, quick math. Yep.
You've only got to be nice to so many people. Yeah.
That's one way to run a campaign. Yep.
That's how I would run mine.
Is it bad that the 3 things that I associate San Ann with are Ralph's, the pizza parlor, and then the college?
What's
In
Ralph's?
that order.
That's not bad at all.
In that order.
Ralph's is fantastic.
What's Ralph's?
It's a bar. It's actually called San Ann Liquor and Lounge, I believe, but everybody calls it Ralph's because this gentleman, Ralph Jones, owned it for a long time before he sold it to the Smiths. Ralph's is going to be bartending my wedding, so shout out to Ralph's. Fantastic establishment. The pizza place is great. Al's Famous Pizza. I highly recommend it. They have a pretty diverse menu, actually, for a small town pizza joint. And the college is in the next town over, St. Leo, which actually also has a town government.
Yeah.
They're a municipality as well. And St. Leo is a great school. My fiance's father was a professor there for his career. And they actually just built a beautiful wellness center with a pool and a gym, and they opened it up to the public. So folks in town can use it, and it's walking distance from my house. So big fan of St. Leo.
Yeah.
Go Lions. And I highly recommend checking it out. It's right on the lake. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yep,
I don't even know how to get there from here.
I come over on 98.
Okay.
It's a quick drive. It takes about an hour. When this office was downtown, it was a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Now that we're on the way to Bartow, it
Yeah.
takes a little bit longer, but it's about an hour drive, 45 minutes to an hour. And you just take 98 across through the Green Swamp, and then you go through Dade City, and then San Ann's right beyond
It was
it.
green, and I've been in that green swamp. I don't know.
It's rough. It can be rough.
I was lost out there at like 11 p.m. at night. And I mean, we weren't alone. I was in my friend, Erin Galacos, actually, her Jeep. We went on this, like, I don't know, these Jeep people like meet up.
Muddin?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
It was interesting. But like this tour guide or this guide, I mean, he shouldn't have been the guide. That's like the first thing to note. And I kept being like, yeah, I've seen that tree before. Because we were going around in circles at this point.
Wow. So you were lost.
We were lost. And I remember my
They were
dad.
doing donuts.
Yeah. Well, my dad was always like, just whatever you do, like, don't go out, to the green swamp. And so I was like, we're going to get unalived. We're not getting up out of these woods today. So, anyways, here I am now. So all's well that ends well.
Well, you made it.
Yeah.
You survived.
But you better watch out.
Richland's famous for that. It's rough.
Yeah. You better. But I feel like we did go to like a really fun like burger place on the way up there. It was called like
Red Top Pit Stop.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, on 98.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I would go back there, even though I swear when we walked in, everybody like stopped what they were doing and just stared. And I was like, okay.
Well, if you walk into Ralph's, everybody will do that.
Okay.
100%.
Just prepare yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. If
I
you're
can
not
handle
from
it.
there, absolutely.
It's part of the experience.
Yeah, I can handle it.
Yeah.
Very friendly, but they will look, they're like, got a new person tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
It's like when you walk into a 10-person church and you're like,
Yeah.
what's these people doing?
Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So Red Top is better than Chili's, which you're now a
I would
rewards
not
member.
say that. I would not say that it's better than Chili's. They didn't have the free chips and, so anyways, on top of being mayor, you are an agent here
That's
at
correct. Yeah.
Saunders Ralston Dantzler. And how long have you been with this firm?
It was 2021 is when I got my license.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I remember it was during the pandemic because I actually had to wear a mask. I wanted to take the
Yeah.
licensing class in person because I figured if I did it
Yeah.
online, I would,
I know.
I would never finish. And so I had to wear a mask during my, during the training class. But, yeah. So 2021 and got involved in some of the listings. And we had a closing last year in 2022 on a 12,000 acre tract in Bronson that we're hopefully going to be doing some interesting conservation work on. And it's been great. I'm a big fan of Dean. I've known Dean since I was very young.
Okay.
Him and my dad go way back to when Dean was working for Governor Lawton Chiles, and then through his time in the legislature. And so my dad founded our company, Natural Resource Planning, and Dean had always wanted to find a way to sort of bring our companies together. And that finally happened, I believe around 2010, maybe 2012, when Dean started the forestry group.
Okay.
And brought a lot of the folks in our company who were agents. He brought them into Saunders SVN and
Your company's name is True. What is it?
Natural Resource Planning
Natural-
Services.
Dan said legacy wildlife earlier. Which,
Idiot I am. That is so
So you got
great.
True out of that.
Straight to jail.
Yeah, well,
Straight to jail. Say that one more time for me.
straight to jail. It's Dan's fault, so we'll just blame him.
legacy
No,
wildlife
wait, what is
was
it?
what Dan said. But it's
Natural-
natural resource planning service.
Right. So and it is confusing. We have a larger parent company called Natural Resource Planning Services.
Okay.
But there are divisions. So there's Legacy Wildlife Services.
Okay.
And Legacy Arborist Services.
Okay.
So we do use that branding.
Yeah.
But the larger company is Natural Resource Planning
Okay.
Services, and we've been in business for next year will be 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
So we've been at it a while,
Okay.
and our bread and butter is traditional forestry. So timber sales, we colloquially call them timber cruises, but timber inventories when we put a dollar value on the resource that folks have. But we're also branching into new service areas like real estate. Environmental services. We provide a lot of environmental services. We do hunting lease management, which is part of Legacy Wildlife, which Dan was referring to. And then we also do urban forest management through our Legacy Arborist Services.
Okay.
So
So the hunting leases, I don't think that we've ever talked about, well, we might have mentioned them on this podcast before, but I really can't remember. What is that?
it's kind of an interesting business model.
Yeah.
It's not one that you would think of as even being necessary, but basically what we do is there's a lot of TIMOs and REITs out there that own enormous acreages of land. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of acres.
Yeah.
Typically in the South where we grow a lot of timber. And so when you have a big piece of property like that, you don't want to only grow timber. You want to
Yeah.
monetize it in any way that you can. And so hunting is obviously, a very important recreational tradition in the South. And so what these TIMOs and REITs are able to do is they lease out their land to hunting clubs.
Okay.
So the problem with that is you think of a TIMO or a REIT having their office in Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
but their land is in the South. How are they going to manage a hunt lease with a hunt club that's in Alabama from 2,000 miles away? And so what Legacy Wildlife does is they manage that relationship between the hunt club and the landowner to make sure that everybody gets along. And they serve as an insurance firewall, but also kind of a social firewall as well to sort of broker that relationship to make it go well for everybody.
Okay.
And the gentleman who runs our wildlife division is Jeff Buescher, and he's an agent here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he manages almost 1 million acres of land in the South. So it's quite a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And when you think about how seriously folks take hunting, sometimes these relationships can get heated. So it's very important that he's diplomatic and able to manage that relationship between the landowner and the hunt club.
And so if you have a hunt lease, are you responsible for, like, I have this, actually Bridget's husband, Cole Sellers, and he has, I think it's a lease, but they have this like dove field.
Right.
And so he's like, oh, I have to go work on the dove field. And I'm like, is that just, are you out there just like messing around, or, you're just like trying to get away? But it's like, I know that they have to like plant the field or whatever, like draw these animals to, I don't know, these fields to.
Yeah, it's creating good habitat, right?
Okay.
So if you are a hunter and you want to hunt a piece of property, you have to make sure that it's providing good habitat, or you're not going to see any animals, any critters. So yeah, I would say Bridget's husband's not just going out and drinking beer at the camp. He's probably working the fields. So yes, when you have a hunt lease, typically any management that you would do to the property to enhance its potential for being habitat for wildlife, that would be on the hunt club.
Okay.
Having said that, other timber management operations like prescribed burning or mechanical treatment or chemical, those, if they're being done to enhance the stand of timber, that might be done by the landowner.
Okay.
Or whoever has the timber lease.
Okay.
So you can have a timber lease as well, right? You can lease the timber to grow it and cut
Right,
it,
right.
and not own the property. In the case of the TIMOs, they probably are managing their own timber, or they have a consultant who's managing their timber. But the whole reason they own the property is an investment, and then they sell the timber in order to generate revenue.
Does your company do prescribed burns?
We do. We've done burning for quite some time, since the 70s. I would say besides the state, we actually pioneered a lot of like aerial burning from a helicopter. My dad and his partner, Tom Maston.
What is that?
It's when you drop fire from a helicopter.
Shut up. How do you drop fire from a helicopter?
There's two ways to do it. There's the ping pong ball method, which is where they drop these ping pong balls that have a flammable material inside of them, and they're injected with another material before they're shot out of the helicopter, and then they're dropped in a grid pattern to burn large acreages at one time. I mean, you can burn thousands of acres in a day with a helicopter. There's another method where you use a gel that you light on fire as it's being shot out of the helicopter.
How do you? Well, wait. This gel is being shot out of the helicopter, and you're just standing there with like a lighter as it's being.
Well, there's like a propane tank, like you use for camping, and it takes. There's a delay. It doesn't. It's not like flaming as it leaves the bird, but it and then it ignites when it gets to the ground or gets close to the ground, and then that's another way. Prescribed burning by helicopters actually, it's safer, it's quicker. A lot of times you get a more complete burn because you're burning the entire acreage. You're dropping fire in a grid pattern across the entire acreage of the burn. So it's a great method for burning. It's expensive. Yeah. And it understandably causes folks concern,
Well, if I see gel being shot, fire gel out of a helicopter, I'm probably calling my mayor.
Right.
And really freaking out.
And complaining. Right. So
that is actually wild. Chad, have you ever seen this before?
I have seen it. Yep.
Chad gets to do all the cool stuff, and then I just get to hear about it.
You have to hear about it
afterwards. Yeah. That's wild.
Yep. I've done a couple aerial burns. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They're typically, you only want to do them on large acreage and then in very rural areas. So I did one in the Panhandle and then way down in South Florida, basically in the Everglades, because you really don't want to be near roads, houses.
Yeah.
You want to be far away from everything when you're doing a fire that big, and it puts up a lot of smoke. But it's a really effective way to get the job done. Now, typically we burn from the ground with drip torches.
Yeah.
And that's more standard. But you may know with 1,000 people moving to Florida every day, burning's getting harder and harder. I mean, there's more roads, there's more houses. So It's not as easy to burn in Florida as it was, 50 years ago when they started the company, but it's still it's the most cost-effective land management tool we have, and probably the best land management tool.
The prescribed burns.
Yeah, because the nutrient cycling, it's natural. Florida burned quite frequently prior to, to modern development.
Yeah.
So it's a great management tool.
Yeah.
We should definitely be using it as much as we can, but we also have to be safe considering that, 28 million people live here. So.
How many people are in the helicopter?
When I went up, it was myself and the pilot. Yep.
Okay.
You're just trying to figure out how you can get a seat. Yeah.
Well, if you become a burn boss, what we call a certified prescribed burn manager or a burn boss, then you.
How do you do? You go to school or do
you take a 3-day class with the state,
Okay.
with the Florida Forest Service.
Okay.
And then you take a test, a in-class test. Pass that, and then you have to do you have to get practical experience. So
Okay.
I think you attend 3 or 5 burns.
Okay.
And then you actually have to do what's called a check burn or an audit burn, where you do the burn and the Florida Forest Service comes out and decides whether or not you've passed, whether or not you deserve
Okay.
certification, and then you get your cert.
Seems
number.
easy enough.
Yeah,
So
I think you're a shoo-in.
I really think so. Then I would be an expert in prescribed burns.
And you could interview yourself.
I know.
on this
I could.
podcast.
It would be a 3, 4, 5 hour long interview at that point.
Just you in a mirror.
I don't want to see myself. It would not be filmed. It would just be voice. Yeah, I mean, sounds good to me. You're right. I think I am a shoo-in for that. So, so then, these like hunt leases, are they year round, or, are there people who come back year after year? And is it like multiple people?
Yes, usually it's a group of people.
Okay.
The best case scenario is that they actually are friends and know each other.
Yeah.
But it is frequently year after year, and sometimes it's generational. We were
Okay.
talking about Richland earlier, where you went mudding one time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the folks, now that's public land.
Okay.
So it's different.
Right,
It's different
right,
from
right.
what we're talking about here, but a lot of the hunt camps out there are quite literally generational, and so these folks feel a deep connection to the land, and understandably so. But the problem is they don't own the land, right? So they have to work with the folks that do own the land, and the service that we provide is a buffer
Yeah.
between those two parties. And they do a lot of improvements to the land. They have to, like Bridget's husband, I mean, they spend a lot of time and money getting the property ready, corn budgets, planting fields, like I said, mechanical treatment, mowing, putting up stands, taking down stands. And, depending on where you are, there's typically something to hunt, year round, whether it be deer, turkey, or hogs. And hogs can be hunted anytime because they're invasive. Vicious. Yeah.
My dad was always like, if you better be able to climb up a tree, which obviously I can't. I have zero body strength, like in general, but especially no upper body strength. So
My dad was gored by a hog. He was, yeah, absolutely. So it was before I was born, so I unfortunately didn't get to, experience it. But yeah, he was on a property that we had managed for quite some time. It was the Bexley Ranch in Pasco County. And he was flagging a timber sale boundary, which is something that we as foresters do. A lot of times, it's not clear where one property ownership ends and another one begins, especially if there's no fence.
Right.
So he was flagging a boundary, and a mama hog came up behind him and
no.
gored him in the calf, and quite literally he could have died. I mean, he required 200 stitches to sew it up.
Oh my gosh.
I was told that Mr. Bexley drove him to the hospital, that when they actually got to the emergency room and opened the truck door, that blood poured out. So it was quite terrible.
It's traumatic.
It was traumatic, right?
Yeah.
He still has a scar. So when folks,
his
leg works and everything. Yeah.
did he kill the,
I don't think so. No, I mean, the hog threw him up in the air.
shut up.
No, that's absolutely what happened. And it injured him very badly, and he had to get himself back to the truck and then to the hospital.
Did this thing like chase him back to the truck?
That's a good question. Maybe he should come on here and you
I
guys
would
could talk
love
about
to
that
hear.
for 3
I
hours.
would love to hear about that.
Yeah,
actually,
it was quite an event. It was a big moment for my mom and my dad.
and that's why you need to be able to climb a tree
Exactly.
if you run into one of these just wild.
Vicious animals.
They're not nice.
Wild
They're not
hogs.
nice.
Chad, what do you think about hogs?
Well, I'm going to hopefully help the population of them tonight.
Hopefully help the human population. And by
No, I think by eliminating some hogs that it helps the population of them. So I'll hopefully be harvesting some.
Okay.
So
On a Monday?
On a Monday, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But this isn't released on Mondays, so
I know, but
the
it's
listener
interesting
doesn't
to me
know
your
that.
life,
Yeah.
On a Monday, I'm like,
Well, I'm going to film a
gets paid
property.
for.
Yeah, I'm going to film a property, and then I'm going to help the owner and the agent, who happens to be part of the same party, with their habitat management.
yeah.
It is habitat management.
Yeah.
Legitimately, it really
Yeah.
is. And it's kind of interesting. I talked about this in the sales meeting. Your big game species in Florida and in a lot of the South are deer and turkey.
Mm-hmm.
But hog hunting is pretty popular.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, especially in South Florida. But you'll have folks that do pay for leases so they can hog hunt. And we had some friends come in from South Dakota, and it was a husband-wife team that we know really well. And the wife, Sheila, she really wanted to kill a turkey, but her husband, Tom, was very focused on getting a hog, and he did. I mean, he got a huge hog, and it's such an out of the box experience
Yeah.
for folks from out west where the hogs haven't gotten to yet, that it's exciting. So
Man.
I hope you have fun tonight.
Did your dad start carrying a gun after that?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Typically we try not to
I mean, you're not going to
carry
advertise.
firearms.
Yeah.
Right, but correct. Yeah. It's important. I would say the two things that scare me most in the woods, it's not snakes or poisonous things. It's hogs and actually yellow jackets. I stepped on a yellow jacket nest once and I got stung all up my left side, my arm, and my hand swole to the
High
size of a
heaven.
glove.
Yeah.
And it was so painful. I mean, it would just throb.
Are yellow
endlessly.
jacket nests normally on the ground?
Yeah, they
that
nest
right?
in the ground and we wear these cruising vests
Mm-hmm.
that are bright orange so that you can be seen in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran for probably a quarter mile after I'd
they
stepped
were
on the nest.
still-
And they were all over me. They got me, and honestly, I only got hit like 16 times. I know people have been hit like 200 times.
Shut up.
Yeah, and apparently your body can only metabolize about one sting per pound of body weight. So, yeah, I mean, you can die.
Yes,
You can literally
yeah.
die.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
the most painful experience I've
Yeah.
had in the woods, I would say.
Both of those things are terrifying. And now
Right.
I didn't know that about yellow jackets. So that's a new fear I get to
Yeah.
think about if
Walk
I'm ever
around
out
with-
in the green swamp again. I don't know.
Right.
How did we get here?
I don't
From
know.
hunting leases and the heartaches that the lessees have to deal with.
Yeah, well,
So-
maybe they're stepping on yellow jackets
Yeah.
too.
So the takeaway point is that the landowner can do pretty much whatever they want to because it's their land, and the hunters have to do things that are mutually beneficial to the land and habitat.
I don't know if the
Right.
owner can do anything that they want. If they have like a lease,
Yeah, I mean, they are governed by the
Yeah,
terms of the lease,
yeah.
of course, but I would say that the hunting will always be subordinate
Mm-hmm.
to managing the stand of timber, right? Because there's more value in the timber than the hunt
Okay.
lease. And so the hunt lease is just kind of like, it's extra, it's something extra for another, like I said earlier, another way to monetize the land.
Mm-hmm.
But the lease would almost certainly be written to always prioritize the timber management.
You know what I've never understood about this is, okay, it takes a while for these trees to grow.
Right.
So how does this work? It's like you own land. Okay, you live in, I don't know, New York, but you own this land in Georgia, Florida, wherever, and then you're selling this timber. So, I mean, obviously it has to be planted. You have to have, I don't even know how many years worth of growth. I have no idea. But so like, how does the exchange of money work? Is the landowner getting the money when the contract is signed, or are they getting the money whenever the timber is harvested? Like what?
It's typically when the timber is harvested. So there's a lot of different ways to design that relationship. If you are what's called an absentee landowner and you live in New York and you have, let's say you have, 20,000 acres in Georgia, you're typically going to have a consultant, someone like myself, to manage that timber, right? Because there's so many things that go, reforestation is incredibly complicated. You have to look at soils, you have to look at hydrology, you need to look at weather patterns to make sure that you're planting the appropriate species of pine timber for that site. So if you are absentee, you're not going to be able to do that yourself. It's just it's too much of a burden. So you hire somebody like me to advise you with the planting. So that's always a cost. There are cost shares that the state government provides to help defray the cost of reforestation, but you typically always have to put money out to plant the timber. So then if you're on a good site, you wait 12 to 15 years, and then you're ready to do what's called the first thinning. And that's typically just a row cut. You'll cut 20%, 25%, maybe 33% of the timber out. That'll usually go for pulpwood, which is the lowest product class. So you have your pulpwood sale, and then the remaining timber has more space, more sunlight, more access to resources to grow. Then you'll do another harvest, another thinning, maybe at year 18 or so. And then you can typically do another thinning and then the final cut, all within 30 years.
Yeah, so that's decades long that these owners are waiting to get paid, to
realize a financial gain.
Yeah.
I've always kind of said that, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, but foresters are really true environmentalists. And I think a lot of people in agriculture are. Forestry is part of the ag community. We very much are a large part of Florida's ag community. And we have to take we have to look at a 30-year time horizon, because if we don't, we're not serving our landowners. We're not serving the markets that demand this fiber, right? To build houses and to paper and all the products that we use on a daily basis that are part of the timber products industry. And then we want to do right by Mother Nature too, by the environment. And so we have to think on a longer time horizon. Otherwise, we're not going to be optimizing for all the things that we need to when we have the good fortune to have the opportunity to manage attractive land.
Yeah. That's just so, it's 30 years is such a long time to think about, a profit. That really is the long game. So I can see where these hunt leases would be, beneficial in getting some kind of income from the property. And so I had always wondered that. I'm like, how are they, paying for like land taxes or, management? That is a huge burden.
Yes, it is. And there's other ways to generate revenue early on. Doing a pine straw lease. So pine straw mulch is very popular. If you were to go around Lakeland, you would see a ton of it. It's a very popular type of mulch. It's great. It's great from a lot of perspectives. It helps to prevent water from evapotranspirating quickly from the ground. It cycles nutrients very well, very efficiently. So it's a great mulch. But you have to get it from a stand of timber, right?
Yeah.
A young stand of timber. But you can start raking pine straw. If you do the proper management, you can start raking pine straw at year 4.
Okay.
So that's another way to bring revenue in the door earlier on. But one thing I wanted to note, it is a long time horizon, but in the South, we're very lucky. Our land is very bioproductive. We have good soils. We get a lot of rain. We have a long growing season. So when we talk about a 30-year rotation, it sounds like a long time, but out west, you're looking at 50 years or longer.
Okay.
Sometimes much longer. So our rotation is it's really the envy of most of North America. New Zealand has a shorter time rotation for their timber because their soil is volcanic. It's very nutrient rich, and they get a lot of rain as well. Not as much sunlight, but they do have a lot of other, the trees have a great growing environment there as well. But it's a long time, but in the context of what it takes to grow a stand of timber out west, it's not as long.
Yeah. And then you said that you guys also are getting into, what was the other?
So we're branching into environmental services as well. And we're talking about trying to have land turn a profit sooner. That's another great way to encourage the land to be productive earlier on. And so there's a few ways to do that. Gopher tortoise recipient sites are becoming very popular.
Is that where they relocate? And because we had someone come on, then they were talking about the gopher tortoise, basically that you have to go and like look and see if they're there. And it's like, what do you do if there are these gophers on the land, that you want to develop? And so this is a way that they can relocate them.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. So that's the development side. If you want to put a target on a piece of property and there's a bunch of gophers, you got to move them. They're federal or they're state protected. They're
Okay.
they have a federal protection, but they're not endangered. The federal government they didn't take the opportunity to list them federally. But right. So because they have protected status, they have to be moved. And so a recipient site is where you would take the tortoises to give them a new home.
Okay.
So that the target can be built somewhere else. And the recipient sites are incredibly profitable for a landowner. Landowners can net as much as $6,000 per tortoise or more.
Wow.
That's moved. And some recipient sites can take up to 4 tortoises per acre.
Okay.
And so it always comes with a cost though, right? So you have to give up your development rights, or there are some restrictions on the development you can do long term if you decide to become a recipient site. But if you think about it from the perspective of a 30-year rotation on timber, if a TIMO or a REIT buys a piece of property, they probably do want to keep it in timber production forever,
Okay.
whatever that means. But they want to keep it long-term in timber production. So maybe giving up development rights isn't such a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you can take the tortoises, you can start throwing off revenue early on, as much as $25,000 to $40,000 an acre in tortoises. You can do the pine straw, you can do the timber sales. So there's a lot of ways to dovetail some of these environmental services into timber management.
And then is one of the environmental services the carbon sequestration?
That's correct. Yeah. So we've gotten into carbon inventories.
Okay.
I said earlier in the sales meeting that I don't necessarily think that carbon trading is going to take off until we have a federal cap and trade law. In 2009 or 2010, they actually did try to pass federal cap and trade federally, and it failed. And so it's anybody's guess when or even if it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if it does, I think the carbon trading will become another critical service that timberlands can provide. Right now, we see carbon sequestration initiatives mostly on public lands. Mm-hmm. Some private landowners are getting into it. So it's not to say that private landowners aren't doing it, but we've specialized in doing the actual inventories of the carbon. And so foresters talk about timber cruises. And so a timber cruise is when you go out and put a dollar value on the trees in the landscape. So those skills that we have for timber cruises or timber inventories transfer beautifully into inventorying the amount of carbon that exists in a stand of timber. And so that's something that we've started doing in our company as well. We've done 4 or 5 carbon cruises, carbon inventories in the last 5 years. So,
what is carbon?
Right. So it's, it's an element, and it's emitted, if you take a JetBlue flight, for example, to Costa Rica,
Liberia,
right?
Yeah.
That flight emits a lot of carbon.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's scientific evidence to indicate that too much carbon in the atmosphere actually encourages the greenhouse effect.
Okay.
Which heats the planet. And so,
which right now I'm like,
very hot.
Yeah.
Right, what was yesterday, the feels like temperature was 118 degrees.
Well, I felt it.
And I felt every degree of it. So, there could be something there,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think the climate is a big and complex
Right,
system,
right.
That has a lot of inputs, but at the end of the day, we probably don't need to be emitting as much carbon as we do. And so carbon sequestration is a way to sort of mitigate for those emissions, and forests are a great carbon sink.
Okay.
And so part of what we do is we have tools to help measure how much carbon is being stored in those forests.
How do you know? You can't pick where carbon goes, right?
So, when humans breathe, we breathe in oxygen
Right.
and emit CO2. Trees do the opposite.
Okay.
So they're taking in carbon when they breathe.
Okay.
And we have folks that are smarter than I am have equations and methodologies for
Okay.
assigning, very specific numbers to how much carbon those trees are sequestering based on many data points. So diameter,
Okay.
the diameter of the tree, of the bole, spread of the canopy, height. These are all things that we measure, and then we're able to put them into models that tell us how much carbon a tree is sequestering. So it's actually quite an answerable question, but you have to use methodologies that foresters originally developed in order to get to the answers of how much carbon is being stored in a forest.
So then the whole thing about, and I feel like I said the word wrong. I said carbon sequestration. How do you say it?
It's carbon sequestration. You added a syllable. It sounds cool.
Sequestration. Is that what you said? Okay. So
I had it written down as carbon SEQ. So
yeah,
That's a good abbreviation.
yeah. But I mean, how does this work? Is a landowner, hiring you and they're saying that they want to do this like program, or that they want to, I don't understand how any of this works.
So we don't have federal cap and trade. So there's no federal protocol. I'm going to use an example. So this is going to probably end up being long-winded, but are you familiar with wetland mitigation banking?
Yes.
Right. So you can't fill in a wetland in America. That's illegal.
Right.
What you can do is you can fill it in one spot and mitigate for it elsewhere. It's called compensatory mitigation. And so we have federal laws that govern that. Mm-hmm. They're very clear. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the lead federal permitting agency. And then within the states, it's typically the Water Management District. DEP is starting to play a bigger role. Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Those laws are very clear. There's really not a lot of wiggle room or confusion. With carbon, as I said earlier, until we get federal cap and trade, there's nothing regulating these markets on a federal level.
Okay.
There are markets out west that are not voluntary. So some of the states in the West are participating in cap and trade. And so that's typically where we are marketing a lot of this carbon. The way it works is if a landowner has a piece of property that they don't want to see developed, they never want to see a land use conversion, they might think of, what are the top 5 ways I can monetize this property? It might be timber. It could be gophers. It could be cattle. 30 years ago, citrus probably would have been on that list. But if a landowner has quite a bit of forested acreage and they don't ever want to change land use, then going out and measuring the amount of carbon that exists on that property is the starting point to say, okay, is this a financially viable endeavor for me?
Okay.
And so if you hired somebody like us to measure that carbon, and then you found markets to sell the carbon into, it could be a way to monetize the land. It also comes with a conservation easement, so you can't ever change the land once you decide to do that. But as I said earlier, the real problem is we don't have federal laws governing this, so the carbon's just not that valuable yet.
Okay.
But it probably will be as our regulatory approach to managing carbon evolves.
What does that mean whenever you say like they can sell this carbon?
Right. So when you measure the amount of carbon in a forest, you're basically coming up with how many tons of carbon are sequestered in that forest.
Okay.
And so you can sell that to a carbon emitter, right? So it's just like wetland mitigation banking. Somebody's emitting carbon on the West Coast. If you're sequestering an equal amount of carbon in Florida, for example, then they can purchase those carbon credits, and then they could say that their net impact is zero.
Okay.
And it's the same with the wetlands. If Target wants to come in and fill in a wetland.
The light just went off, didn't it, Linda? When you hear all these companies saying we'll be net zero by 2030.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
What they're doing.
Right.
Yes.
They're buying.
Yes.
So they're not actually
Carbon
eliminating their
credits.
carbon.
Yes, they're
outputs.
just purchasing these credits or whatever.
They're
Okay.
mitigating for it.
Okay.
And it's the same. It's the same with the wetlands. Target's not. They're still impacting that wetland.
Yes.
But they're enhancing a wetland and saving a wetland elsewhere
Okay.
to ensure that wetland mitigates for the wetland that they destroyed.
Okay.
Boom.
Well, we can just wrap it up. I'm just kidding. Okay.
So you say it comes with conservation easement. You do a lot with conservation easements?
We do.
Yeah.
And so that was an area that my dad and Dean really could work together on quite a bit. I mean, they're both.
This is Jack Vogel.
That's correct. They're both, I would say, experts, statewide experts in conservation easements. I mean, Dean actually wrote the legislation, the state legislation that started these programs. And for our listeners, the conservation easements are a way for landowners to sell their development rights. So we talk about all the ways landowners can monetize their property.
Yeah.
They can also sell their development rights and be compensated by the state of Florida
Yeah.
for giving up those development rights, which is great because the landowner gets to hold the land and manage it, but then it can never be developed.
Right.
So, as I said, Dean wrote the legislation. He is one of the fathers of conservation easements in our state. My dad's been more involved on the private sector side through real estate, but also he served on the Acquisition and Restoration Council for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. It's typically called Florida Forever, but he was on the council that ranked properties and prioritized them for conservation. So both of these men have a lot of experience in conservation easements, and it's something that at NRPS, we have deep and long-standing relationships with agricultural landowners all over the state. And a lot of these people don't want to see this land that they've owned generationally. They don't want to see it developed. They don't want to sell to Target. They don't want to see the land paved over. But it's getting harder and harder to turn a profit with agriculture in Florida. It really is. Timber's not worth what it used to be. Citrus is really struggling.
Yeah.
The markets with cattle are up and down. So, and we're a rapidly urbanizing state. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So doing agriculture is harder and harder here. So conservation easements, like I said, are a great way to sort of mitigate for that. And with our longstanding relationships with landowners all over the state, we can bring a lot of these folks into the conversation about how they want to conserve their land in perpetuity. And so a very important program that our current Ag Commissioner, Wilton Simpson, is championing right now is the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program. And that's a conservation easement buying program that is run by FDACS, by the Florida Department of Agriculture. And this program allows agricultural landowners to sell a conservation easement on their property that is held by FDACS, but then allows them to continue farming, to continue doing cattle, citrus if they're able, timber.
Yeah.
So it's a great program for land conservation in our state, and it's one that my dad and Dean are deeply involved in.
And so your company and you have these contacts, or, a client or a landowner can contact you, and then you're able to walk them through it.
Absolutely.
Man, you guys do a lot.
Yeah, we can explain that procedure to them. And I always tell people everything we do in forestry, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it is about conservation. We want to see land conserved.
Yeah.
Keeping land in timber is a way of conserving it. It's a way of monetizing the land so that it doesn't have to be developed. But these conservation easements are really critical because as we all know, land in Florida is very, very valuable.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, the highest and best use won't be ag, or it won't be conservation. But these conservation easements are a way to tie people's hands.
Protect that, yeah.
Protect that by compensating them
Yeah.
for it. So yeah, we love to help landowners think about their options, and then get them to where they can be fairly compensated for their land through a conservation easement. And that's why real estate is such an important part of forestry. I mean, the two industries really tie together because at the end of the day, it's all about the land.
Yeah.
And as foresters, we want to see it conserved, or at least being productive. And there are tools in real estate like conservation easements that allow us to do that.
Yeah. And I think knowing, being in real estate, having these contacts, knowing your buyers and your sellers, and
Right.
which two will mesh nicely, and, who can kind of keep this legacy going. I think that's really important. And I think that's definitely a skill you have above the rest, perhaps. But I think we have to wrap up. I don't even know. This has definitely been the most enlightening
Good.
podcast that
Glad to hear that. We covered a lot.
I think this is a two-parter for sure.
Oh, I know.
Let's do it.
I know.
Because there's multiple things that I've heard you talk about, being track certified, iTree,
Absolutely.
all that stuff that you know about and that you can get prospective clients,
Yeah.
with the right whatever it is, municipality or just a planning service, which is what y'all are. And it's just hearing you talk about it, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, there's a lot out there.
It might be boggling.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that was my one thing that I could throw into this podcast.
Needle him on. Yeah.
vocab.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And I really, really hope to have you back here soon.
Absolutely.
It seems like you have a wealth of knowledge, expert opinions as well.
There you go.
And so I hope your first podcast wasn't so bad.
It was great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
No, please. I really come back anytime. And if you ever need a third in the helicopter, I'm pretty much always around, unless I'm going to Liberia on a whim.
Well, you'll be my first call.
Thank you.
Are you a boss though?
I could be within a matter of.
Yeah. Take the class.
Yeah,
You'll
that's
be a
right.
boss real quick.
That's right. I was going to say a BB, which could also be for something else. So.
And what's the best way for people to get a hold of you and
Your company.
NRPS?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our website has all of our contact information. Our company, again, is Natural Resource Planning Services. Our website is nrpsforesters.com, and it has addresses and phone numbers for both of our offices. We have an office in Lake City and San Antonio, Florida.
Okay. The mayor of
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen,
It
the
all
mayor.
is together. Yeah, the light bulbs are going off.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Can't wait to have you back. And Chad, next time we'll do it in one take.
Awesome. We'll try.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Do.